And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, you know, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
Bill Maher just took aim at Zohran Mamdani, and the takedown is nothing short of hilarious. The comedian and talk show host shredded Mamdani's far-left agenda, joking that his New York victory might be the best present the Republicans could have hoped for. Maher's critique wasn't mild or measured. It was cutting, clever, and brutally funny. Every punchline landed with precision. You won't want to miss this one. Let's jump right in.
The most popular politician on the left.
AOC? I don't know.
One of, but who's, you know, Bernie is
Bernie, yeah.
Bernie is, I mean, he's not a capitalist, you know?
No, he's not. And he's also not president.
He's not, but
And never would be.
But neither is Mamdani.
No, no, but he will, trust me, he will be featured in the campaign commercials.
But they're going to feature people, they boogeyman everybody.
Yeah, but you don't have to boogeyman him. He does it to himself.
Maher's absolutely right. Republicans don't need to create a villain out of Zohran Mamdani. He does that himself every time he speaks. With Mamdani likely to win the New York mayoral race, critics say his victory would hand Republicans a political goldmine, proof that the DNC is drifting toward full-blown socialism. Mamdani calls himself a democratic socialist, but that label doesn't reassure anyone outside his base. And Maher isn't buying it. To him, Mamdani represents the kind of far-left idealism that sounds good in theory, but only strengthens conservative arguments.
This must be horrible for a guy like you, who you spent your whole life talking about how government tries to do too much, which it does, and spends too much. And here you have Trump, who is the Republican, who is aggrandizing more power than anybody, as we just talked about. And on the other side, you have the guy running in New York, Mamdani, right? Okay, who's like a straight up communist. I mean, he is. He talks about, you know, the things that communists say. I mean, he wants free grocery stores, free buses.
I want him to win.
You want him to win.
On the surface, it sounds ideal, the kind of feel-good message that grabs attention and wins applause. But dig a little deeper, and that dream starts to look more like a warning. Mamdani's vision might thrill idealists, but for anyone who's witnessed socialism collapse in practice, it's a familiar and unsettling repeat of failed system dressed up as progress.
Every 20 years or so.
Wait.
We need every 20 years or so, we need a conspicuous, confined experiment with socialism so we can crack it up again. Socialist slogan used to be, workers of the world unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. The new socialist slogan is, trust us, this time it won't be a mess.
Yeah, exactly. History has shown us this pattern time and time again. Socialism sounds compassionate, but it collapses under the weight of its own promises. The problem isn't just greed, it's human nature. People need motivation to innovate, to take risks, to build. When competition disappears and everyone gets the same reward, no matter the effort, ambition fades. Productivity drops. Bureaucracy expands, corruption thrives, and soon, the system built for equality turns into one of frustration and failure. Mamdani's ideas, free handouts, heavy government control might look noble on paper, but in reality, they suffocate progress and crush independence. In the end, everyone suffers equally, just not in the way they imagine.
So, yeah, when the post-war Labour government in Britain was about to get started, one of their leading lights was a socialist named Nurian Bevan. He said, what could go wrong? He said, we have a nation bedded on coal, surrounded by fish. It would take an organizational genius to have a shortage of either. In 3 years, they had a shortage of both. That's socialism.
Britain serves as the perfect warning of what happens when socialism takes hold. In the early 1900s, it sounded like a noble dream: equal opportunities, fair wages, shared prosperity. But that dream quickly soured. Once private industries were taken over by the state, innovation died, red tape exploded, and the economy slowed to a crawl. What was meant to bring equality ended up spreading hardship. By the 1970s, Britain was being called the sick man of Europe, crippled by inflation, strikes, and stagnation. It wasn't until Margaret Thatcher pushed bold free market reforms that the country began to recover and rebuild its strength.
And one of the things that we've said, beyond saying that we're going to make a sanctuary city for LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers, beyond saying that we're going to establish an office of LGBTQIA plus affairs, is also that we're going to provide $65 million in funding for gender-affirming care, the same amount of funding that the federal government threatened to pull out from local providers for that kind of work. And in this moment especially, if we want to fight the Trump administration, we have to do so by fully funding our own services, taxing the wealthiest New Yorkers and corporations.
And that's exactly why Bill Maher sees Zohran Mamdani as a potential disaster for the Democrats. Maher understands that every time the party veers too far left, it pushes away the moderates they desperately need to win elections. Many Americans backed Donald Trump not out of blind loyalty, but as a reaction against the extremes of progressive politics, especially the push for gender-affirming procedures for minors. Yet Mamdani seems determined to reignite that controversy, vowing to raise $65 million to fund those very programs. For Maher, this isn't just bad strategy, it's political suicide. It gives Republicans the perfect weapon, proof that the left is drifting further from common sense, morality, and the realities that everyday Americans care about most.
He has attacked you personally and publicly like this.
He's not a socialist. He's a communist, okay? This is not a socialist, man. This is a communist.
I don't like to see a communist become mayor, I will tell you that.
I call him my little communist. He's my little communist mayor. We should never be in a position where we're talking about a communist.
We're gonna end up with a communist mayor. It's not even believable, my beautiful New York. I think if a communist takes over New York City, I think that's a gift to the Republican Party.
Last time you were on this program, you were unequivocal in saying you do not like capitalism. But Trump, just in those remarks there, I counted, called you a communist 8 times. Are you?
No. I'm a democratic socialist. I've said that time and again.
There's no sugarcoating it. Zohran Mamdani doesn't need Donald Trump or Republicans to paint him as a radical. He's doing that job himself. His proposals for city-run grocery stores and free public transportation sound generous on the surface, but they lean dangerously close to full-blown government control of the economy. While Mamdani calls himself a democratic socialist, his words and policies echo the same far-left rhetoric that has sunk countless movements before. Even with the best intentions, he's reinforcing the image that Democrats are sliding into socialism. As the saying goes, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you know exactly what it is.
What I've found is that this vision of democratic socialism, it's one that often comes back to what Martin Luther King said decades ago. A vision of, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism, there must be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. Here in New York City, wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, 1 in 4 are in poverty. 500,000 kids go to sleep hungry every night. It's untenable to live with this kind of a divide. We have to actually have a politics that puts working people first.
That's the funny thing. When you really stop and look closer, Mamdani's rhetoric might sound fresh and inspiring to some, but it's just the same old political script wrapped in new packaging. Promises of equality, fairness, and opportunity, we've all heard them before. They sound great on stage, but once these politicians get into power, the story changes. Suddenly, the fairness they preach starts punishing success, and the opportunity they promise turns into overregulation and red tape. America doesn't need that kind of recycled idealism, and New York certainly doesn't either. This country was built on capitalism, innovation, and the freedom to compete and create. Those values made it a global powerhouse. So why gamble with what works? History's already answered that question. Socialism doesn't deliver. And Bill Maher, to his...
Assemblyman, you're running for mayor of New York and not prime minister of Israel, but you've made inflammatory statements like calling Israel an apartheid state and questioning its right to exist as a Jewish state. Just this week, you were evasive with a reporter about condemning Hamas. Given New York has the largest Jewish population outside of Israel, why should voters who see this as a moral red line trust your clarity and judgment?
Well, I really appreciate this question and an opportunity to just clear up, I think, a number of misconceptions. First and foremost, you're right. I am running to be the mayor of the city, and this city will be the focus of my administration, ensuring that we make this a city everyone can afford and everyone knows that they belong to. And also, millions of New Yorkers, myself included, care deeply about what's happening in Israel and Palestine.
Did you catch that little sidestep? Classic politician move. The moment things get uncomfortable, they dodge the question and bury it under a mountain of word salad. Gavin Newsom does it with a grin. Kamala Harris turns it into performance art. And AOC delivers it like a scripted monologue. Now, Zohran Mamdani's officially joined that club. His evasive answer about Israel wasn't just a harmless deflection, it was a red flag. It revealed the kind of leader he'd be if he ever ran New York. One who ducks tough questions instead of answering them. When clarity is needed most, he offers polished vagueness and moral theatrics. And that's the real problem, not what he says, but what he won't say. Because in politics, silence and evasion often scream louder than words.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt. Who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Well, it wasn't so much his aunt as his dad's cousin, but, semantics. Douglas, is he ready to lead?
No, in absolutely no way is he ready to lead, and that was just another reminder of it. This is such a self-involved little narcissist with so little going for him.
And that's exactly their playbook. Spin emotionally charged stories just enough to tug at people's hearts and win their votes. It's a time-tested tactic, and the Democrats have perfected it through identity politics. Zohran Mamdani's story fits that mold perfectly. Sentimental, symbolic, and tailor-made to make him look like the face of compassion and progress. The party will embrace him as the moral voice of New York, the champion of the forgotten. But those who see beyond the glossy narrative know better. They understand that stirring speeches and tear-jerking stories don't equal sound leadership. Mamdani's tale might impress the dreamers, but for the realists, it's just another well-rehearsed performance. Beautifully staged, emotionally polished, but ultimately hollow where it matters most.
But he even decides to turn the memory of 9/11 and the 3,000 Americans murdered that day into a story about his aunt and the subway. It's interesting, like so many things that this smarmy candidate does, he makes it about himself and it all turns out to be untrue anyway. It seems to the extent that he had any such aunt in question, she wasn't in New York at the time and in any case didn't wear the headscarf.
So it turns out Zohran Mamdani's heartwarming backstory doesn't quite hold up once you dig beneath the surface. But in a deep blue Democratic stronghold like New York, loyalty often outweighs logic. Despite the cracks in his narrative, Mamdani seems poised to glide toward victory not because of his policies, but because of party allegiance. The real question isn't if he'll win, but what happens next when the spotlight fades and the campaign slogans lose their shine. Running on lofty promises is easy. Governing a city as complex and divided as New York, that's a whole different story. How Mamdani handles that test will be telling. Because his rise isn't a triumph of progress, it's a warning. Behind the polished speeches and utopian slogans lies a risky ideology history has already exposed time and again. Bill Maher's concern is valid. If Mamdani leads New York down that road, it won't just damage the city, it'll reshape the Democratic Party itself. And that's where we'll wrap up today's video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button and subscribe for more sharp political breakdowns like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.